Okay, so we'll get started. So, good evening, Tewksbury. It is Thursday, November 21st. It is 6:04 p.m. and I'd like to call this monthly meeting of the Tewksbury Board of Health to order. We have a packed agenda tonight, and we also have times listed on the agenda to see if we can actually keep on track. First item tonight is approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes. The agenda originally had just the October meeting, but we also have the meeting minutes from our public hearing of last Tuesday, November 12th. So you both have the minutes. The clerk and I have both reviewed and made any edits. So I just ask if...
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes. I've reviewed them. And I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as amended.
Okay,
And it's been seconded.
good. We have one member with no voice tonight. Okay, and then we have, so we'll vote for them first. So all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes for October 17th, 2019 as amended, signify by stating aye.
On a hand vote? Two.
Two aye.
And three.
Chair votes aye as well. So motion carries unanimously. And then moving on to the other minutes from our November 12th public hearing.
I'll motion to approve those as amended as well.
Okay, anyone second by show of hand? Good. So motion's been put forth and seconded. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes for the public hearing of November 12th, 2019, signify by raising your hand. Chair votes aye as well. Motion carries unanimously. Good, we're actually ahead of schedule. See, putting times in this helps. Okay. Old business. So let me just state something before we get into the official old business and reopen the evidentiary portion of the hearing. For those that weren't here at our hearing last week, the process of the public hearing is that there is an evidentiary portion where Mr. Oliveira's lawyer will be engaging conversation with the board. We'll have a chance to ask him questions. Once he has no more information to share with us, we'll close the evidentiary portion. We will then open a public portion where at that point, anyone that's in the public wishing to speak will be granted an opportunity, but there's some caveats with that. We're going to restrict the comments to just the facts or the issues that we are addressing tonight at hand, and we'll cover those right before we have people where we open it for the public portion. And it's not a venue for character comments, either good character or not so good character comments, because that has no bearing on the parts that we are going to be working on tonight. As I said at the last hearing, depending on how the evidentiary portion goes, if we are able to close the evidentiary portion, then there will be a public portion tonight. If for some reason we aren't able to close the evidentiary, there won't be a public portion till the following meeting if we close the evidentiary at that point. And the same statement I made the last meeting goes for this one, that if anyone in attendance tonight or is unable to make a comment, or if we don't get to the public portion tonight, please submit your feedback in writing, because that will become part of the record for these hearings. So even if you don't have a chance to speak tonight, or next month if it happens, go to that, please submit your what you would say in writing, and that will be entered into the record, because we do want people to have a chance to voice their concerns as it relates to the specific items that we'll be addressing tonight. And the final thing is that if we get to that point, there are sign-up sheets. People come up to the podium, and you just fill in your name and address, and then I'll put time limits just because we're all trying to get home tonight, and depending on how many people want to speak, then I'll probably look at like a minute or two for each person. But we'll address that when we get to that point. So, Attorney Bornstein, if you'd like to come up. So again, this is from the agenda, it's a continued hearing on Olivera Farm. Public hearing was open November 12th, 2019 to discuss whether the Board of Health permit for the keeping of animals at 199 Marston Street should be modified, suspended, or revoked, or that any actions regarding the site assignment decision related to the permission to operate a custom slaughterhouse requires modification. So would anyone like to make or would our motion maker like to make a motion to just open the evidentiary portion tonight?
So for clarification, this is the second evidentiary.
Yeah, so I guess, is it reopening them?
Or
Reopening.
We're reopening them,
Thank you.
and we're continuing. Mr. Bornstein was last speaking, so we're going to make a motion to reopen the evidentiary portion of the public hearing for Olivera Farm.
Okay.
Seconded?
Motion is in second. So all those in favor of reopening the evidentiary portion of the public hearing signify by raising your hand. Chair votes raise his hand as well, so the motion carries unanimously. Okay. So Mr. Bornstein, I'll let you have the mic.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having us back again tonight. I do want to confirm with the board, I submitted a letter yesterday towards the end of the day, dated November 20. I brought the original, and I have several extra copies if the board needs that.
Okay, I know I'm in receipt of it and I've read it.
And the clerk's in receipt of it and is indicated. I'm going to move that we move the document into the record.
Okay.
That's been seconded.
So all those in favor of moving this document into the record signify by raising your right hand. Chair votes aye as well.
Great, now I'll just deliver the original to Ms. Sawyer if you don't
Sure.
mind.
That's fine.
And I would like to briefly summarize the contents of the letter for the board, if you don't mind, also for the members of the audience who are here. I don't plan on recapping my statements from the first session, but I do want to make it clear that I am here on Mr. Olivera's behalf. My name is Don Bornstein. My office is Johnson and Bornstein. We're located in Andover, Massachusetts. I've represented Mr. Olivera in the past. At the first hearing, I did explain to the board that I'm not here to deny the gruesomeness of the reported alleged incident. But I did note at the last hearing that the statement, the facts, the truth of that incident is contested. I explained to the board at the last hearing that I would be meeting with Mr. Olivera's team, I described them as, and I think you know he's been charged with a very significant crime. I met with his defense counsel, and I met with his defense counsel's team last week. Mr. Olivera has been directed to not make public statements about the incident itself, and I myself have also been directed the same, to not make public statements about that incident, and I don't plan to do that tonight. But I did have some important information to report back to the board.
If I can just pause you for one quick second, because you made that disclosure, and I just want to restate from the purpose of the board for those that weren't at the last hearing that likewise we realize and respect that there is a portion of what happened out there is a criminal case, and we are not getting involved in that. It has no bearing on the actual what happened has no bearing on what we're going to be looking at tonight, because that's criminal and we don't cover criminal.
Yes, I understand that, and I understood that from the comments of the board made at the first hearing session, but I did want to explain that status. I've also again asked my client, Mr. Olivera, to remain at home tonight and to not come out. The allegations made against him were very upsetting to him. The board did ask for some information about the operation of the farm, and I provided the details of that in the letter. Mr. Olivera has operated that farm for approximately 45 years. He operates it pursuant to a number of state and municipal permits. I note some of those permits in the letter, including that he's a licensed and bonded livestock dealer. He's licensed as a custom slaughterhouse. He went through a significant upgrade and licensing process approximately 5 years ago that included this board, and operates pursuant to those requirements. And he's subject to various inspections and reporting requirements. I understand that he's subject to routine inspection by the state. I also noted the number of animals that he's had on his farm most recently. I asked for a count. That count was taken on Monday. The counts reflected in the letter. On that day, he had 12 goats, 23 cattle, 24 swine, for a total of 59. In comparison to the number of animals that he's permitted by this board to keep on the property, he's permitted to keep 50 swine, 35 cattle, 60 goats, 200 chickens and geese, and 40 sheep, with up to 80 sheep for 1 week per year. So he's well within the maximum limit set by the permit that was issued by this board. I did note some operational information in the letter. He's assisted by 2 farmhands on the property. He's operated the property like that for a number of years, and he believes this is adequate to operate the farm in that way and to continue operating the farm. Both the operation of the farm and the custom slaughterhouse, he believes, can be adequately and humanely operated with the staff that he has available. That said, there were requests made at the first hearing about the consideration of hiring an additional qualified person, particularly to help in the slaughtering process. That was well taken by Mr. Oliveira. That was discussed with him, and he has agreed to undertake that step. That said, it is not an easy thing to do. I actually did provide just a couple newspaper articles for some reference. They're a couple years old, but they're still very relevant to the market today. The availability of slaughterhouses in Massachusetts and New England is very limited to begin with. The availability of people to do that work is very limited as well. The availability of people who are experienced and qualified to do that work is limited. So we have requested 90 days from the board to identify and retain a person of that type. And it is a fairly long period of time, but I don't think it's unreasonable in this situation. And I wanted the time period that seemed adequate to propose to the board, so I have proposed that. In addition, my letter proposes a second item that was not solicited by the board, but is offered by Mr. Oliveira, and would be a manner that we could assure the board that the farm is being operated in a humane manner. And what we've offered to do is we've offered to identify and retain an animal science expert, an expert consultant, who would be retained at Mr. Oliveira's expense. He would come to the farm, he would review his processes and the manner in which he keeps animals, particularly the slaughtering process. And he would review that with an eye towards animal welfare and be able to report back on it. We've also requested that they have 90 days to do that. I think that's a significant good step on Mr. Oliveira's behalf to suggest that to the board. Again, we need to identify an appropriate expert for that. We have not done that yet. I thought we would have someone ready at hand because I had contacted and was aware of Peter Golub. You maybe remember him. He's both a lawyer and a veterinarian. And importantly, in this situation, is an animal enterprise consultant. So exact type of person we'd want on our team, and Mr. Oliveira had on his team back in 2014. I contacted Mr. Golub. Mr. Golub has retired. He's no longer practicing. He was not able to identify a specific person who'd be appropriate to fill that role, but he was able to give me several leads, and I've begun following up on those leads. In addition, I have some contacts through the Tufts Veterinary School, and I'm following up through that as well to try and find a qualified individual. And again, we've requested 90 days to identify, retain that individual, have them go out and do their work and report back to the board. I've made some other statements in my letter as well that I don't know that I need to repeat here, but I believe that's the gist of the letter. So Mr. Oliveira is willing to make efforts to identify and hire someone to assist him on the farm, an additional person, and to also retain that animal science consultant or expert to review his processes and to be able to assure the board that he's operating his farm in a way that is consistent with animal welfare. I would note again, it's noted in my first letter that was filed shortly before the first hearing session, that Mr. Oliveira has operated this farm for a very long time. In speaking to him, it's obvious to me that he takes great pride in his farm and his operation, and it has very clearly been something that has been his life's work for a great many years in the town of Tewksbury. The town has changed a lot over the last 45 years, but Mr. Oliveira continues to run his farm like he always wanted to, I believe, and like he has for a long period of time, and he very much wishes to continue to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for providing the animal count. And just as a matter of record, the Tewksbury Animal Inspector has not conducted the 2019 barn book inspection yet, so that will be done before the end of the year. And we realize too that the numbers of animals will fluctuate on any given week given status of customers purchasing animals and what he's been able to bring on. But thank you for providing that. And just to clarify too, there are no chickens right now, at least as of today or when the letter was written.
Correct, no poultry.
Okay, thank you. I need a little bit of speaking, then I'll turn it over to my esteemed vice chair because he's the legal eagle in our threesome here tonight. There are two different issues we have before us. Back in 2014, when I was on the Board of Health at that point, we had issued several notice of decisions. One was relating to approval to operate a custom slaughterhouse, and the other was for variance to the regulations of keeping of animals as was written at that point in time. And part of this is going to be for everyone's benefit, just so you understand what role the Board of Health has in everything that occurs at Mr. Oliveira's property. In terms of the keeping of animal permit, the only thing that we have noticed, well, both those decisions had conditions built into them. So those conditions we then look at to see, is everything seem to be still in accordance, or do we find anything that may not be in accordance? So we'll touch on one of those in a little while as it relates to the keeping of animals permit. But on the slaughterhouse and the custom slaughterhouse, just so people are aware, where it's a custom slaughterhouse, which means the customer will purchase the animal before it's slaughtered. Just like if you go into a seafood restaurant and you pick the lobster in the tank you want served for you for dinner, it's the same type thing, except here it's done with livestock, not seafood. And as a result of that, the U.S. Department of Agriculture does not provide on-site inspections, so they've passed off the oversight of custom slaughterhouses to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and specifically their food protection program. In the Massachusetts state laws, there is one law which seems like it's one of these horse and buggy laws because they make reference back to the late 1800s in it, where local boards of health have the ability to approve the operation of a custom slaughterhouse. But that's equivalent to the Queen of England. It's just a formality, because Department of Public Health is the ultimate keeper of the rules and enforcer of the rules and inspector of and enforcer of the regulations. And they have very stringent regulations that govern the operation of slaughterhouses and custom slaughterhouses. So the Board of Health, we're in this awkward position that while everyone looks to us as having the ability to shut operations down, even if we were to suspend or revoke this approval, that does nothing with the state's or the DPH's license that was issued to operate the custom slaughterhouse. So all the rules relating to the custom slaughterhouse that are enforceable all reside with the Department of Public Health. Just so that people are aware of what our role is and who really the ultimate authority in the running of the custom slaughterhouse is. Myself and Director Sawyer were able to speak with individual from Department of Public Health right before the meeting. I think he's the assistant director of deputy director of the Food Protection Program, whom was on the phone just to get facts so that he can pass them up to people higher up in the chain to make some decisions based on what we were sort of asking or requesting. So at least we have been in contact with DPH. Up until this point, they have not been on site since October 31st in the alleged allegation to do any inspection. So that's just another point of fact. But at least we were able to reach out to DPH and speak with them and get some of our questions answered. And in the process of that, the director can share with you afterwards, Attorney Bornstein, I did ask if this person had any knowledge or suggestions of where we could look to for, or how easy it was to find one of these animal consultants as you're looking for. And so he gave us a website that we'll give to you afterwards that you can also look to utilize. We had also been looking at a similar type thing as you had proposed in your letter of bringing a consultant on board. And the Board of Health has used that several times as it relates to food establishments where there have been numerous food code violations. And as part of enforcement action, we have mandated that the establishment retain a food safety consultant. And at least in that case, there is already a list of consultants because they're more common than animal consultants. So then that person would pick one and then they would be retained to do an initial inspection as if they were doing a food safety inspection, document their findings, send us copies, and then work at that establishment to train the staff and put together whatever operation manuals might be needed. And then we would ensure that they were retained for a while so that they would do monthly compliance checks to ensure that their training they were providing was actually being carried out. So I was pleased to see in your letter that you would have the foresight, or Mr. Oliveira had the foresight to look at that as an option as well. But that rang very well with, or resonated very well with us because we have successfully used that model in town to get some restaurant operations back on the correct track by using a consultant. So with that said, I will turn it over to my vice chair who also has his voice tonight.
Thank you for your letter that was entered today, dated November 20th. And some of the suggestions in here are certainly some of the things that we're looking to do to build on. And I think it's a good foundation and a start for us to build on. One thing that I think is probably not in conformity with the way I'm thinking is the 90 days that you're requesting to do this. I believe after some of the research that I've looked at that a shorter period of time is warranted to bring the operation into compliance with DPH requirements. And the only way to determine whether or not you're in compliance with DPH requirements is to have a DPH inspection. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do immediately is to make a request to DPH for an inspection. And what I was going to suggest is that our board get a copy of that request and that we follow up with our own request to make sure that DPH follows up with the inspection requirement and that an inspection actually take place on the farm. The reason that we think that's important is because it lends some organization to the process. Number one, we will have a benchmark to measure from, and you will receive feedback with your inspection report, and that inspection report will be filed in the due course and be available to the public as well as the board and yourself. I think it's important that the operation get that feedback from DPH and that we be able to follow up with that. That said, I'm looking at the actual document that authorizes custom slaughter in Tewksbury, which was issued back in 2014. That document had 17 conditions in it. And I was hoping that I would get some feedback from Mr. Oliveira's representative and Mr. Bornstein on bringing all of those conditions current. And I think that's important that the permit holder or the authorized person conducting custom slaughter understand that these conditions were put in place so that we had measurable standards to look back on and determine whether or not he was in compliance with the requirements to keep operating and conducting custom slaughter. And I don't know if you have it in front of you, Mr. Bornstein, but that's the notice of decision that's dated, let me see, what date is that, Ray?
July 17th, 2014.
July 17th, 2014. It was filed with the town clerk September 2nd, 2014 here in Tewksbury. Section, I believe it's section 3 were the findings of fact, section 4 was the decision, and section 5 went on to, section 4 went on to discuss and iterate the contents of the decision. And if you look there in section 4, under the decision, you'll see items 1 through 17, which was the basis for the operation to conduct custom slaughter. And that's defined in the decision, and the decision is fairly clear. I don't think there's anything in here that's ambiguous. Looking closely at items 1 through 17, we are particularly concerned with compliance for items 1 through 8. And 1 through 8 are not discretionary, they're mandatory. In order to conduct the operation, these things have to be in place. And what we're looking at tonight is whether or not, and that's all we're looking at tonight, is whether or not the applicant has satisfied 1 through 17 and is in compliance with 1 through 17. So we're going to have a discussion about what those are, and then we're actually going to make some findings whether or not we feel you're in compliance with them. Because I think the ultimate goal of our board and our community, it's not punishment. It's compliance. That's all we seek here. That's all we have the authority to do, is to seek compliance with the conditions that Mr. Oliveira agreed to in 2014. And like any other authorization that's issued, it becomes imperative that the person holding the authority to do this come forward and demonstrate compliance with these issues. And it's 1 through 8 that we're very concerned with, that Mr. Oliveira may be out of step with. And I know that Mr. Bornstein brought in the foundation piece that I was talking about, was going out and getting an independent or a person hired that can review the operation objectively, can look at items 1 through 8 and 1 through 17, can look at the Department of Health's regulations, and can look at the state regulations in order to assist Mr. Oliveira back into compliance. And with compliance, we think that the operations can continue, can be monitored and reported, and the community can be assured that the operation is complying basically what's called with the letter of the law, which are these 1 through 17 conditions. So with that, we're going to just check through a few of these conditions, especially 1 through 8. And I'm sorry that the audience does not have the document in front of us, but quickly we're going to enter those into the record. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, would you read those in?
Sure. Do you want me to read them?
Just
in
read them
one unit?
directly in,
Okay.
1 through 8.
Okay. And let me just start with the starting of section 4, which is decision. Therefore, the Tewksbury Board of Health, based on the evidence presented at the public hearing, including but not limited to the facts presented above, voted to approve by a vote 4-0 the applicant's request to operate a custom slaughterhouse per Mass General Law, Chapter 111, Section 151, Slaughterhouse, at 199 Marston Street, Tewksbury, Mass., with the following conditions, and amended on July 17th, 2014 by a 5-0 vote. Number 1, the Tewksbury Board of Health defines a custom slaughterhouse as a facility that offers services for people who want their privately owned livestock or poultry slaughtered or processed for their own personal use. The meat is cut, packaged, and labeled not for sale. These meats are returned to the owner of the animal, who may have bought it from the farmer just before slaughter, and cannot be sold. Condition number 2. Animals and livestock shall be slaughtered in accordance with USDA and Mass Department of Public Health rules and regulations and in a humane way. Condition number 3. The slaughter of poultry, game, and ruminants shall not be performed without the proper cleaning and sanitizing of all equipment between each category. Condition number 4. Slaughtering and other associated activities shall only be performed within the slaughterhouse and only by properly trained employees of the applicant/owner/operator. Members of the general public are only allowed inside the designated restricted area of the custom slaughterhouse during periods of use. Condition number 6, there shall be means to prevent cross-contamination from the general public and the outside environment into the custom slaughterhouse. Condition 7, a form of tracking the animals and livestock from auction house to consumer shall be utilized. And number 8, there shall be guidance documents provided to the consumer regarding safe packaging and transportation methods. And I would just like to add a side note for your benefit as well. Some of these orders of condition were as a result of activities that have been ongoing prior to the issuance of the approval of the running the custom slaughterhouse. So these are all born on either things that mirror the DPH regulations or things that we also put in to ensure that things that had been happening in the past that were not sanitary would be restricted.
And I know that they sound in individual efforts, but they're not. These are combined efforts that form one package of compliance that actually provide DPH, the local board, other people measurable efforts by the operator to comply with the regulations for food safety, packaging, handling, record keeping, these are all parts of the process. When we look back at compliance with the permit and we start checking through these, what we've noticed is a lack of compliance with items 1 through 8. So we're here this evening to try to bring the Oliveira operation back into compliance, and how we are attempting to do that is through a combination effort of the operator and the board. The board's duty is oversight. The operator's duty is compliance. Mr. Bornstein has come to the board this evening, has indicated, I'd like to bring on an expert to help with the operation, to bring everything into compliance, especially 1 through 8. But moreover, 1 through 17, because that's what's important here. It's an entire package. 1 through 8 is what we're focusing on, because we think that Mr. Bornstein recognizes that a person coming in with oversight authority and the ability to critique the operation would result in a much better operation, and an operation that's in compliance with both the Department of Public Health and the local regulations, which is our goal, is to bring them into compliance. So as a result, we think the 90 days is too big a period to do this. And we know from just what's available through the colleges, agriculture, and the departments in Massachusetts that experts are available, and they're available immediately, sometimes within 24 hours if you have to, but most assuredly within several days. And the board feels, and I'm speaking for myself, everyone else except my colleague will speak their own.
We'll read her cards.
We'll read her cards. And the idea here is to bring the public's attention to the fact that someone will be soon in the mix that is going to make sure that all of these conditions are complied with, because that's what's required under the permit. That's what's required for you folks to go to the Oliveira farm and have custom slaughter. That's what you expect to happen when you go there, choose an animal, buy an animal, and expect to have it slaughtered. So I just want to quickly go over a couple of broader categories here. And I'm talking about 1 and 8. Condition 1 and Condition 8. Okay? Condition 1 anticipates that labeling will occur. And labeling is important, because if you're leaving with product, it should be labeled and it should be packaged accordingly. More importantly, number 8 anticipates that there'll be guidance documents produced. This is the harder part of business, because I know that he's dealing with multiple cultures that require multiple, maybe production documents, but it's still part of the operation, and the operation has to comply with that. Not only that, you can't leave a slaughtering operation without ice, gel packs, or something else to be in place so that when you transport, you're transporting safely as well. We don't have any control over that transport. What we have control over is the fact that it's there, that it's available, that the literature is there, that it's available, that it can be read by whoever is ordering custom slaughter in their native language or whatever is required to convey the message. That's the operator's duty, to do that. We want him to get his consultant to help with that 1 and 8. We'd like to bring him into compliance very quickly on 1 and 8. Okay? As it relates to number 7, a form of tracking. Well, What happens? He's a bonded animal purchaser. He goes to auctions. He seeks out other farm producers. There is a chain of records that need to be kept in the ordinary course of business. The public demands no less than the ability to know where the product comes from, how it was transported, when it arrived, how it was treated, and eventually the modality of slaughter. These are the things that are minimal in record keeping. It's part of the permit requirement. We need to see that record keeping in place. We need to have the gentleman that, or the woman that Attorney Bornstein is recommending or seeking out, determine that the compliance is in place, the record keeping is in place, it's being submitted to the director, the sanitarian is going out to check these things. The record keeping is paramount in order to bring the Oliveira operation into compliance. Number 6, means to prevent cross-contamination. Moving animals with machines may not be the best way to do it. Having a procedure in place to prevent cross-contamination is the most important thing that you can do, because we all understand that custom slaughter is done for one reason, so that you have meat that is edible. If it's contaminated, it no longer meets that requirement, whether it's the Jewish faith or any other faith. So there has to be a process in place, and that process starts from the beginning, when the animal arrives, to the end, when it's packaged. That process is something that even your religions and the people that have been doing custom slaughter way before Mr. Oliveira, and prior to you seeking out his services, they had a methodology. That methodology has to be part of the operational plan, and it has to be complied with. There are other people that have written great works on what's necessary in order to accomplish good custom slaughter. I was just simply reading, and I would refer anybody that wanted to read any of the information that I familiarized myself with. Temple Grandin, a Massachusetts resident, autistic, was the leader in determining how custom slaughter and the humane treatment of slaughtered animals, how it takes place. The information's available to everybody. Information's available to the Oliveiras. Information's available to the Department of Public Health. The information will be available to the person chosen by the Oliveira family to lead them through these conditions and get them back into compliance. Members of the general public are not allowed in the area of the slaughter, period. There's no exceptions. It's simply not in the permit. It can't happen. We know what happened. It's not greatly in dispute that it was outside of where it should have taken place. That is not something that can happen ever again. And the reason that we're here is to make sure that the public is not exposed to this accidentally, intentionally, or participates in it. So it's simply one of the conditions in here that has to be abided by, and it's one of the conditions that the person that the Oliveiras choose to bring them into compliance and assist them through the process is going to assist them, maybe even picking up Temple Grandin's methodology of circular patterns to calm the animal down before slaughter. There are things out there that can make this operation much better. And that's what I think Mr. Bornstein is here to do. He's here to assist his client and bring him into compliance so he doesn't get subject to further sanctions of compliance. Number 4, slaughtering and other associated activities shall only be performed within the slaughterhouse. We've talked about it. Number 3, slaughter of poultry, game, and others. Proper cleaning, sanitization, packaging. This is really just a package of safety, cleanliness, order, and animal protection that we permitted this operation on, and we seek to bring them back into compliance. This is not penalties. We are not holding them out other than to anything that they agreed to in the very beginning when they took this permit. Now we want them to be in compliance, and we're asking for the assistance of both the operator and his counsel to assist with that. Number 2, slaughter in accordance with the USDA requirements and the Mass Department of Public Health. I think that when they pick an animal expert, that's going to be part of the package that they get when they bring this oversight onto their property, and that they start actually self-criticizing their own operation with their expert. Their expert's going to make their operation better. That in turn is going to make the public comfortable, and that in turn is going to make sure that the product complies with the religious rituals, preparation, packaging, and delivery. Okay? So our goal here tonight is not to punish. Our goal here tonight is for compliance. Our goal here tonight isn't to stop ritual slaughter or prevent it. Our goal here tonight is to make it better and in compliance with what they agreed to from day one in 2014. Because everyone has a First Amendment right to free association. Free association covers ritual slaughter as long as it's done appropriately. With that, we have some conditions that we may have to add on top of what's here to make sure it's in compliance. We have a couple of concerns with a couple of small adjustments to this. I think that we can make sure that the public feels comfortable that we're doing what we are charged to do, and that the Department of Public Health is doing what they're charged to do, the USDA is doing what they're charged to do, and when everybody's working towards that goal, I think we'll have a great operation that will service the community and service Mr. Oliveira's customers and be something to be proud of. Two of the things that I just seen that I thought were maybe lacking here is that there doesn't appear to be an overall way to record keep this stuff. It's not like you can pull a form off the internet and say, I'm just going to fill it out. So we're looking for the applicant and the person that's operating here to come up with a system, almost a real-time system, because it's available. It's easy to do in this day and age. Real-time record keeping is something everyone does. It should hit the farming community at some point. It should hit the processing community at some point. So we're thinking that with that suggestion and your expert in place, that they can bring real-time reporting and record keeping, because even the community has gone to real-time permitting. So we're asking you to come up with a reporting system with your expert, provide it to us, let us critique it, make sure that it's working for you and working for the board to make this a seamless, a less burdensome proposition for everybody. There are a couple other things that concern us and concern the public, and believe me, we've read some of the letters that have been submitted. Some of the letters say, stop this operation. This operation should be stopped. Well, to be honest with you, I don't think we have the jurisdiction to stop it because it's authorized by the board. And right now, the facts are greatly in dispute. We're not here to talk about the facts. Mr. Barry mentioned it. My brother mentioned it. We're not here to talk about what happened. We're here about bringing them into compliance with the permit conditions. So stopping this operation is not something that we're inclined to do. At least I'm not inclined to do. I'm inclined to bring them into compliance, keep the operation going, and make it better. So for those folks that wrote in and said stop it, I'm just not one of the ones that are going to be on board with that. But I am going to be one of the ones on board with making sure that everyone toes the line and that we're in complete compliance with the requirements of the authorization to conduct custom slaughtering.
If I can just quickly add to that too, that as I was saying earlier, the Department of Public Health has the legal right to suspend or revoke the license that they've issued for the custom slaughterhouse. That's not something that we don't have any authority over that license that was granted.
Nor would we exercise it because we know what our jurisdiction here is. Our jurisdiction is to review the permit and make sure everyone's in compliance with it. And that's what we're here for tonight. There are a couple other things that I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with the hours of operation. I don't know what the hours of operation is. Is it a 24-hour slaughter operation? All farms are 24 hours. All animal keeping is 24 hours if you've ever had an animal, even a cat. Will let you know that, it's time. But I'm concerned about the hours of operation at the facility. Okay? I think they need to be narrower at this point. First, for self-inspection, DPH inspection, it will make the operation at least small enough that they can get their hands on it, modify it, critique it, and give it back so that you have something that the Oliveira farm can weigh in each hand and say, this is what we need to do to be better. This is what we need to do to be in compliance. So right now, and I'm just going to query my brother counsel, what are the hours of operation at the Oliveira farm?
And that as it relates to slaughtering, correct?
As it relates to slaughter.
I'll see if I can get some more information for you on that right now.
We'll take a few minute break before we have the public speaking, and I'm sure he'll query the folks that have that idea so that we can help tailor a time that works so that this investigation, this critique, these inspections, the people that can help the most being the people Mr. Oliveira is going to hire and report back to us so that we have a very detailed description of the operation. And we know that it's not occurring at, 10 o'clock at night, midnight, 2 o'clock. I'm not saying it happens. I'm just saying we want to add it as a condition. It's a reasonable assumption that you're going to operate within a window that we all know the window. Okay? As it relates to a few other things, that would allow the special person hired to monitor the situation much more closely. And we think that that will result in a much better critique, in much better suggestions. And it will result in a quicker turnaround. Because that's what we're ultimately looking for. We're looking for compliance tomorrow. Of course, we know that we can't get that. But we're not looking for compliance in 90 days either. So we think that at some point, we're going to advance that schedule. At least that will be my suggestion, that it be advanced and done before December 19th. Okay? December 19th is the date that we'd like to see compliance. We would have liked to have seen the Oliveira operation get these people in place, examine their employees, check their training, check their records, comply with sections 1 through 8 in the permit, look at sections 1 through 17, and report back to us by the 19th. With that, I'm going to yield to the chair.
Okay, and just to clarify, the date we stated December 19th is the date of the December Board of Health meeting, so that's why we picked the 19th. I guess there's really not much more I can add because you did a very thorough, better explanation than I could have. But again, we're really trying to, we know that regulations need to be enforced or that orders of condition need to be enforced, and we're really on the mindset that when things aren't, training is really what's needed. So we're really a firm believer, whether it's a new regulation that we issue or update or orders that we have to enforce, education gets us much further, much better results than penalization.
Although I will say that penalties are important so that the public understands, because some people believe that a penalty should be associated with this. First compliance, then penalties. First compliance, and if there's a failure, some sort of pecuniary sanction might be imposed. And tonight, I'm indicating that if we don't have, and it would be my suggestion, if we don't have somewhat of substantial compliance by the 19th of December, and we're moving along with the inspections, the training certifications, the right people in place, the reporting, the bookkeeping, 1 through 8, that sanctions would be appropriate. And if sanctions are appropriate, we start everybody, regardless of who they are, with a $100 a day fine for not being in compliance. So that's what we would be looking for. We think that's a big enough sanction that it actually moves people to get things done. And it would only be a sanction in as much as it wasn't in substantial compliance with what we were asking for by December 19th. So that monetary portion would only come into effect if there was a failure in bringing this farm in compliance with its permit conditions, bringing the expert on, spending the time and effort to bring that in.
So are there any comments you'd like us to read from your cards, or are you fine with the explanations? Okay. I guess any feedback from you? I know we just gave you an awful lot.
You did. And I appreciate the comments. Many of those comments are well taken. Many of those comments I think are actually consistent with the letter I'd submitted to the board yesterday. They're more detailed, but I do appreciate the comments. Certainly part of the review we were proposing would have taken into account the conditions of the permit. So I think that's well taken to direct us, particularly the priority of some of those items and the immediacy of some of those items. I hear the December 19th date. I hope we can get someone identified, working, and in substantial compliance. You're looking for a report by the 19th date back from that person?
We would actually like to get the report a couple days early so that our staff would have a chance to review it, because at that point, the purpose of having another public hearing are greatly diminished with substantial compliance. What we'd like to see is action. What we'd like to see is results. And I think reporting those things a few days in advance would be appropriate for us to do a follow-up. And I don't think there's any reason you have to wait to the 19th. I think if these things come in place, you could issue interim reports to both the sanitarium and the director. And I know that they would be anxious to be working with you to bring you into compliance with the permit criteria. So, as it relates to the 19th, it's a date. It's a date for substantial compliance. It's a date where we have to consider some sort of pecuniary penalty. Not that we want to get there. What we want to get to is substantial compliance. I think you understand that.
I think I do, and at a minimum, I was prepared tonight to discuss interim check-in dates with the boards, things of that nature. December 19th, I think, is a somewhat aggressive goal, but I hear the board being very interested in us coming into that substantial compliance, focusing on conditions number 1 through 8 for that. And all I can say tonight is that we would be taking our best shot at that.
Ministerially, I think you have a couple of holidays coming up here, obviously. And so next week, with Thursday upon us, we would hope, and we know that people are celebrating the holidays, and the holidays are on us very quickly. And you can understand our anxiousness to get into compliance as quickly as possible, because we think that's going to benefit the community in all sorts of ways that I've already mentioned. So from a ministerial standpoint, reporting, and I think, after Thanksgiving, every Thursday, if you could bring them up with a status report, I think that would be important, that our director, her staff, the other people that were involved in this incident can all be brought into the fold to understand your level of compliance. And by doing those weekly status reports, I think you're going to be assisting yourself in your own critique and showing us what you know to be important. Obviously, we think getting a professional involved immediately is important, and I would like to see that done within 7 days. Okay? Why don't we take 5 minutes?
Yeah.
We're going to take 5 minutes, okay? So you can speak to your clients, and you folks can speak among yourselves. I'm going to yield to the chairman.
Yep, it's 7:06, so we'll take I think last time we gave you a 10-minute break, so I think that should be enough to query your client and the questions we have.
I would think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think we're gonna get the meeting restarted. It is 7:20 PM, so we're coming out of our adjournment. Okay, so anything you'd like to share with us, Attorney Borenstein, when you, after communicating with your client?
Sure. So why don't we start by talking about hours a little bit so I can explain in somewhat more detail what the hours of normal hours of operation the Olivera farm are now. So Mr. Olivera generally operates 7 to 7. That's sort of his stated hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The way his business works is Monday through Wednesday is generally very slow. So the hours often, practically end up being less than that. And Thursday through Saturday are his busy time. So he works, throughout most of those hours, most Thursdays through Saturdays. Sunday is generally reserved as a pickup day. So customers coming in to pick up their meat, often happens on Sunday. Maybe there's occasional process of an animal that's scheduled for Sunday. That's fairly unusual. Those hours do get a little bit longer during certain weeks of the year, certain holiday periods, where he'd be busier throughout the week, and those hours might stretch a little bit beyond the 7 o'clock hour, just because of the demands of the holiday. But those are one-offs, a couple weeks a year. So that's his operation now. I'm sure we could come to some sort of schedule if the board was interested in inserting that as an additional condition at some point to the permit. We could talk some more details about that, but that's a general overview of the hours. On the board's discussion of having, in essence, a return date of December 19th on the review by the expert, the family is concerned about the tightness of that schedule. They're certainly willing to make all efforts to try and get that done, as has been discussed already. I think it's been mentioned by the board, but that basically leaves us with about 2.5 weeks. Next week's going to be mostly a wash, not that we're not going to try, but that leaves us with around 2.5 weeks or so of really both identifying, retaining, getting the person out there, getting a report back to the board. But we'd be happy to keep you updated on our steps towards doing that. We can approach it with hopefulness that we get it done, as has been discussed by the board. Of course, we can't guarantee that without having someone on board making guarantees to us yet. But we're willing to attempt that.
I just want to make it clear, we're not looking for perfection, we're looking for substantial compliance. That's not full compliance. We're asking them to get there as quickly as possible, just so you understand that, we're giving them a measurable standard, which is substantial compliance. We think that they could meet this schedule under the circumstances. If there were some reason they couldn't, it'll be included in one of their status reports, so we'll know right away if substantial compliance can't be achieved. That's why we would have these status reports, because maybe there'd be some way to assist or some way to suggest. But I think if we keep our thumb on it with the status reports, substantial compliance could be achieved in that time frame. Obviously, if there's something that goes awry in that, the applicant would have a chance to explain, request additional time, but it would be for that segment, not for the entire aspect of what we're asking them to do here. We think that they can find the right expert to do that, and we think it's imperative that these activities happen and commence almost tomorrow. But your point's well taken, and I think we're building in the cushion you're looking for by saying substantial compliance.
If I can just add too, that I think that your idea is excellent of having the weekly status reports, because the board, as of recent, have had some issues before us where either there's been no action or last minute action right before meeting, where it was sort of, they passed it and say they passed it, but really wasn't really substantial at all. So I think it's definitely going to be a positive to have the weekly status reports, because that gets everyone aware that effort is being made. And that's really what we're trying to make sure, is that a sincere best effort is being applied. And again, we're not looking for 100% perfection right now, but for the December 19th date. If that happens, bonus, but we just want to know that, again, substantial action is being taken.
I appreciate that. And we are 2 for 2 on our weekly reports to the board so far. So I do want to point that out. And I do want to express to the board in the very brief conversation I just had with the Oliveira family, I'm very optimistic that actually many of these items are, sound to be in compliance now. So I'm hopeful that many of these items are not going to be a chore. Some of these items showing compliance, assuring compliance is a very technical aspect, needs that expert. But in terms of the record keeping and many of these things, I heard some very positive things during our brief conversation.
Yeah, your expert's really going to speak to compliance. The expert's going to understand, first of all, the Department of Health regulations, the permit requirements, and our own regulations. That's why the expert comes in as an oversight in order to show the applicant and the operator where they might be deficient and to bring them into compliance with correcting that deficiency. So thank you. That's a good point. With that, I just had one question. I know there's a lot of people that want to speak here this evening, but you have to understand our limited role, and you've heard me say it over and over again, it's permit compliance. We're not here, nor can we take testimony that would affect this gentleman's client or anyone else or prejudice them. So we can't have a general discussion on what happened that brought us here. We can have a 1 or 2 minute presentation if you absolutely have to speak on something that we're missing in the compliance requirement of the permit review. So we have to limit our comments to the permit review that we're discussing, that we're entertaining, and that we will eventually make a motion and adopt this evening. And that's what the public discussion would be about. I would have to keep you on point, and I know the chairman would have to keep you on point as to what we can go in, but we don't want to prejudice anyone here, including Mr. Oliveira or his counsel or anyone else down the road, because everyone is entitled to fairness, and fairness is going to be by limiting our comments.
Okay.
Is there any other evidence to be taken in before we consider the public hearing, or do you want to hear from the public beforehand?
Let me just cover the other one so that
You want to open another one, or you want to keep it in this one?
we'll keep it in this one,
Okay.
just so we can get to a public session. So the other, as I alluded to at the start of tonight, there were 2 notice of decisions that had order of conditions in which not everything was in compliance with. So the other one I just want to briefly talk about is the, again, from the July 17th, 2014 Board of Health meeting. It was approved. There was a variance request for the regulations for keeping of animals that was written at that time because the number of animals requested was large given the size of the property over what the regulation had granted. And one of the conditions that we'd had was,
I'll give those pictures over to board.
yeah. As I'm pointing at the document, we're just gonna give you some pictures I'm talking about. There was an order, but let me just get the actual document. Unless you have it, I had 2 of the slaughtering with me. Okay. Yep. Okay, so like I did on the other one, I'm just gonna read the starting part of number 4 and then read off the order that needs to be complied with. Under section 4, therefore the Tewksbury Board of Health, based on evidence presented at the public hearing, including but not limited to the facts presented above, voted to approve by a vote 4-0 at the June 19th, 2014 Tewksbury Board of Health meeting the applicant's request for variance of the Tewksbury Board of Health's regulation for keeping animals to increase the number and types of animals at 199 Marston Street, Tewksbury, Mass. With the following conditions. And the condition is number 3, appropriate fencing shall be present, maintained, and secured at all times to prevent any animals from escaping or leaving the farm. And that was back then as a result of, as animals will tend to wander, whether it's a dog or cat off your property or animals off of a larger piece of property. There had been animals wandering off in the neighborhood, and there is a neighborhood directly butting the property, especially along where the house and the slaughterhouse and the barn are. And when the animal inspector had gone out to the site on November 1st to investigate the complaint that had been phoned into the Board of Health or a health department, she had noted in one of the photographs she took that there was fence missing. There were fence posts, but no fencing separating between 74 Cinnamon Circle and the property. And what we present the attorney with tonight is plan from the Tewksbury GIS system showing aerial photographs showing where there is no fence. And do we have the pictures?
The attorney has them.
Okay.
He's looking at them.
So that was an area that fencing had been before, and we just want to make sure that,
I was there today.
yeah, and Director was there today and observed firsthand that indeed the fencing is still not there. So we're not sure when it came down, because those aerial photographs were taken at some point this year when there were still leaves in the trees. But we just want to make sure that the fencing does come back up within 7 days, because that is a residential neighborhood.
I'm just being informed as you're describing that to me that the fencing was removed to replace it with improved fencing. So the expectation is definitely to have that improved fencing installed.
Yeah, so we would just look for, want to make a motion for that, that we'd be looking for that being taken care of.
With the statement of the attorney indicating that the fence was removed to improve it, I'm going to make a motion that the fence be installed. Given the holiday, I'm going to make that 10 days.
Yep.
The fence be reinstalled within 10 days. Seconded.
And all in favor signify by raising your right hand. Okay. Motion shows 3 right hands raised.
And how do you want to handle this? Do you want to have the public speak before we close the public portion of the hearing? Because we can't take any evidence after that. I'm just going to speak to council for a
Yeah,
second.
we're just trying to figure out logistics.
Motion to close the public hearing unless the attorney has anything to add.
I mean, the evidentiary portion.
Evidentiary portion of the hearing. Do you have anything to add, you'd like to add before we close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, sir?
Nothing further.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing.
Okay.
It's been seconded.
So motion has been put forth and seconded to close the evidentiary portion of this hearing. All those in favor signify by raising your left arm. Jane still here?
Is James,
Okay, motion carries unanimously, 3 left arms to none. Okay, so the evidentiary portion is closed. So now we will open, we'll need to make a motion to open the public portion of the hearing.
I will make a motion to open the public portion of the hearing with the stipulation that we are only speaking about the permit conditions. We're only speaking about the compliance that we discussed, and you heard us discussing it. If we can keep our comments limited to that, we'll allow anyone in the public to speak for 1 or 2 minutes.
And I'll add to that, that if you have comments about, you think the slaughterhouse should just close, we can't do it, but direct your comments to the Department of Public Health, please, the Food Protection Program, because they're the ones that control that, not us. Because we'd rather people use your energy and try to help you focus in the place where it'll actually, hopefully, resonate.
you second, right?
Seconded the motion to open the
Okay.
public portion.
So motion's been put forth and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your left arm again. Okay. Left arm's carried, 3-0. Okay, public portion is open. So again, if anyone's willing to speak, you can come up to the microphone. If I can just get a quick idea first, if you just want to raise your hands if you have intention of speaking, it doesn't mean you actually do come up. I just want to see what I can do for timing.
All right, why don't we start with the front row then?
Yeah.
If that case.
Yep, so,
Anyone with their hand up in the front row that would like to speak?
and again, just so I'm clear, I saw 2 hands. There are other people want to speak? Okay, so let's start off with, this guy.
They got a timer on you, so.
Yeah,
Give her time.
give you like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that, she writes slow.
Well, clock doesn't start till she speaks into the mic.
So if I stand here, I'm good, right?
Okay. And it's not like town meeting. Moderator's not gonna cut you off or gavel you. We just want to be respectful of people's time tonight.
I had to change a little bit of what I
Oh,
wrote.
quote,
Jennifer
quote, Nagel,
Nagel,
you signed
Jenny's
it?
Way.
Thank you.
I had to change a little bit of what I wrote because of what was said here tonight. So I'll just gloss over that part. As far as, I'll just go right down to the Department of Public Health. Unfortunately, the local Board of Health is unable to order a cease and desist based on the grounds of the animal cruelty. So what can our local Board of Health do? The Department of Public Health, which permitted this custom slaughterhouse without the input or notification to the town, has now left the town out to dry. I've searched high and low, and the last site visit that I can find from the DPH was back in 2016. And according to DPH guidelines, 105 CMR 500.031, Section K, and this will specifically apply to this local Board of Health, so if you can just follow along with that. Part 10, any person who slaughters and/or processes poultry, or in this case meat, for sale in a small on-farm processing operation under a USDA exemption shall comply with all written protocols of the department for such activities. And I highlighted, I'm not going to read through all of the requirements, but I highlighted the ones that I think have the most standing. Part 1 on page 2, persons who operate custom meat or poultry slaughter and/or processing facility shall comply with all federal requirements applicable to such operations, including but not necessarily limited to those specified in 9 CFR 303.1. And that's for the exemptions, meaning it's for custom slaughter. They must maintain certificate attesting to the health of the animals in addition to a record of the source from where the animals were obtained. I know as a livestock farmer myself, all of our records are maintained. Every time we go to an auction house, every time we go to a facility that processes anything else, we have every record for every single animal. Every animal has its own specific ID. If the animal is not tattooed, it's got a scrappy tag. They're changing the scrappy tags to electronic IDs, kind of like a, I don't know, some kind of, pretty much, yeah. But at this point, we can still use the scrappy tags. But there is a way to literally follow every animal back to where it was originated, back to its original farm. And that's literally for public health safety. If you've got the issue in Athol with another custom slaughterhouse that infected all kinds of people, and there's lawsuits going on left and right because there was no record keeping. And that's going on now. All you have to do is Google the Athol slaughterhouse. Live animals purchased at live animal auctions without a health certificate has to be slaughtered within 3 days. According to this attorney here, Attorney Bornstein, I believe, he said that he picks up on Tuesdays and their busiest days are Thursdays through Sunday. So, I mean, if we go through that 72-hour process, he's picking up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So how is his busiest days Friday and Saturday? That's well past the 72-hour limit. Also, if you go down, I don't know, like second to the last paragraph, the person in charge, in this case, Mr. Oliveira, who shall be responsible for the facility's compliance with all relevant requirements, and at all times, records shall be maintained and made available to inspectors sufficient to conduct trace back and trace forward of food products in the distribution system. Again, that's a public health issue. Strictly, totally, 100%. According to the notice of decision which Mr. Scarano went over today, Section 2, animals and livestock shall be slaughtered in accordance with USDA and DPH rules and regulations in a humane way. Number 4, slaughtering and other associated activities shall only be performed within the slaughterhouse and only by properly trained employees of Mr. Oliveira. According to the November 12th meeting that we were at, Mr. Attorney Bornstein stated that this particular issue that has brought us here today, he agreed that it happened outside of the slaughterhouse. Section 4.
I just want to make something clear. He's already sent in correspondence indicating that they've been brought into compliance with that. Just to let you know that that is not an outstanding issue. He's already addressed it and sent it to the board.
Section 4, oh, sorry, I did not, number 4. Number 6, no cross-contamination from outside environment into the custom slaughterhouse, which again goes to Section 4. And Section 7, form of tracking animals and livestock from the auction house to the consumer shall be utilized. Again, that's not being utilized. As far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure I will ruffle some feathers, and it's probably not in my best interest, but the Massachusetts Department of Public Health has truly left this town out to dry. They have not inspected regularly to make sure that he followed the terms of the license that they provided to him. They've not appeared to make any semblance of action upon the claims submitted against him. They have done nothing until tonight when I found out that somebody, I don't know if it was you they called or whoever, but somebody mentioned that they were called tonight. Therefore, because of all that was said, it's incumbent on our local Board of Health to step in and order immediate cease and desist upon the following violations of Mr. Oliveira's notice of decision. And I do understand, Mr. Scarano, that you said we are not going to do a cease and desist. We're looking for compliance. So, those things said, I will skip everything that's in the next paragraph, which I kind of went over with the notice of decision. The fact that Attorney Bornstein is looking to have an animal expert come in, and he's looking for 90 days, where the Board of Health is looking for several days, ideally. What about a temporary cease and desist until that animal expert is brought in and a new slaughter person is brought in, and the DPH goes out and does their inspection? I think a temporary cease and desist is not overstretching, overreaching, anything like that.
I might be able to address you quickly on the cease and desist. Normally, to issue a cease and desist, we almost are held to the standards of a temporary restraining order or preliminary injunction. That there has to be a showing of such irreparable harm that we would have to immediately act. I am going to indicate in summary fashion that I think the period for irreparable harm has passed because we've already received some compliance, but there are other things on top of irreparable harm, which I don't think we can demonstrate for a cease and desist, that we would win on the merits if we issued a cease and desist, that our decision would be upheld as not being arbitrary or capricious. And understanding that our thing is not to stop our operation, but to bring it into compliance. And I think we've stated our goals very clearly, that I don't think a cease and desist would advance the cause as much as what we've indicated and what we're going to indicate in our motion to bring them into compliance. So I hope that makes some sense to you.
It does make some sense, although things have changed drastically in the last 12 years.
You know,
And
point
let me-
taken.
Let me just
Okay.
add too, because one of my questions to the person, Director Sawyer, and I spoke with DPH tonight. One of my questions was sort of hypothetical. If we actually went to the point of, I guess, suspending and trying to revoke the approval we'd given back in 2014, what action or actions would that result in the Department of Public Health taking? Would that require immediate inspection? Would that require them to suspend or rescind the license? And he was not sure. He was going to bring that up to his superiors because no one has asked him that question before. But in my reading of this, and I'm not the lawyer up here, I'll refer to you, but again, as I said, this is the equivalent of the Queen of England. It's more a formality for us in that even if we were to rescind, the license issued by the DPH is the overarching thing because that license was granted before the department became aware there was slaughtering being done back in 2014. So DPH does not look for local approval as the final requirement to allow the operation to continue.
I understand that, but we do have local overreach as far as the animal permit itself goes. And
There's no doubt there's violations, but let's go back to quickly. Basically, the Department of Public Health has a superseding ability to allow this operation, even if we were to issue a cease and desist. I'm going to put it that way. They have final say in the operation of the slaughterhouse. We are a local approval authority, and I think you'd have to look to the Department of Public Health because they would have the final say, just like they had the final say, and I know it was probably a miscalculation not coming here simultaneously with their approval, but I don't think a cease and desist advances what we're trying to do from a local standpoint, which is compliance with the permit. But thank you for that. Letter. That was very informative.
I do believe, just quickly, I do believe that waiting for the Department of Public Health to have a say, we've now been waiting almost 2 months, or a full month anyway, since this allegation took place. And my concern really isn't the legalities of this. My concern is the animals that are there. That is not something that is done once. That is not something that's done of, oh, hey, let me see what's going on. And Mr. Attorney Bornstein, just to go over what he had said on November the 12th, he said that he has livestock experience. He said his family took care of cows, I think, something to that effect. And I also have some livestock experience, and he had stated that it was physically impossible for that to happen, and I am telling you it is
We're not
not.
going to get into those facts this evening. We're not going to discuss the facts of what occurred there. We're going to limit our discussion to what it is that we can do to bring them in compliance with the permit. And I know that these are upsetting. Believe me, I know they're upsetting. And I want to just reiterate that we can't prejudice anyone by talking about facts that haven't been determined, are still in dispute, and all the evidence isn't in, to the arbiter who will make that decision, and we are not them.
I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. Lastly, the Department of Public Health, we have been interacting with them. We believe that we've moved the dime by getting our people involved in this inspection process, which allows us to go forward with our first condition, which is a letter to DPH from the applicant operator with a follow-up letter from the Board of Health for an immediate inspection over there. So I think we can address your concern there, that is number one, and it's going to be the number one item on my motion this evening. Okay?
And they are very well aware, and that's being passed up the chain, that these letters are being submitted.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I be recognized for a moment?
You
Oh,
can.
sure.
So I do want to just correct two things that were just spoken by, I believe, as Ms. Abel. One, I did not comment on pickup dates for animals. That statement was attributed to me just now that animals were picked up, I believe, on a Tuesday. I did not address that. I don't know that information, and I don't know that that's accurate. Number two, a statement was attributed to me that I admitted that that there was slaughtering occurring outside the slaughterhouse. I don't know that. I don't know what happened that day. I wasn't there that day. I haven't made a statement to the board as to the facts of what happened that day. I commented on the reports at the earlier meeting, and those reports indicate that. But I didn't agree that that happened or admit that it happened or make that statement on behalf of Mr. Oliveira.
Well, we'll just clarify the record for Mr. Bornstein's benefit. There's been no admission as to any facts associated with the criminal complaint or any other activity that occurred there, so that everyone understands that we're not prejudicing Mr. Oliveira in any manner whatsoever as to an admission by his attorney at this public hearing.
And I did assure the board in writing that no slaughtering activities would be taking place outside the slaughterhouse. I do.
Right, you had read that into the record.
We read that into the record, so thank you for clarifying that, and we wouldn't want any prejudice to befall you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to come up and speak?
Hi, Doug Sears, 80 Geiger Drive. At moments like this, I think back on this a little joke of how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? You know, it can be any number, but first the light bulb has to want to change. And I think this is, you know, everybody here, I think, will come down to be on the same side ultimately. We want to make sure we've got the Department of Public Health is telling us what, when it's in action, what it wants to be done in this situation with its regulations. We have the Board of Public Health sharing that interest. I see various folks over here who are customers and who have a religious interest in the process of slaughtering animals to go in according with their religious interests. I can imagine that folks just all want this done in the right way. So it's just a matter of, I guess, getting the information out, getting people cooperating on this so that we don't have to keep going over this again and again and again. And I imagine if people all were to be talking freely, that we'd move in that direction where the light bulb will want to change and that we'll be able to get this resolved. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sears. Do we have anyone in the third row that would like to speak?
Yeah, if you want to sign it in the sheet up there.
Most of what I was going to say after
Oh, if you
listening.
just want to state your name and
I'm
address.
sorry. Yes, Joseph Bardsley, resident, business owner in the town. I'm here in support of the Oliveira Farm. Most of what I was going to say after listening to the board wouldn't be appropriate at the time, but I just wanted to note that I was here in support, and thank you for your open discussion on making the compliance and making everything work. So, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for coming tonight.
And in recognition of that resident, we see that there are other residents that have the exact same support for the Oliveira Farm, and we recognize you all, and you're numerous. And we'd like to recognize that you're here, and your presence alone speaks for support of Mr. Oliveira.
Okay, anyone in the, I think I set up a fourth row? Anyone in the back row want to speak? My glasses on. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we'll open up to any other row. If you didn't raise your hand before, you're welcome to do. Thank you for coming up tonight.
Hi, my name is Fatima Ismail, and I own 2 condos here in Tewksbury. We run a business out of them. And we are here. Our community is out of Billerica, and we use the farm to have halal meat from there. And we are here to support him. And there are about 15 of us that have come to support him. I just wanted that on the record.
Thank you.
Thank
Did
you,
you
Ron.
sign in?
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
And while you mentioned that, this has been a learning process for me. I've learned more about slaughtering and slaughterhouse regulations than I ever thought I'd know. But one of the things that I learned, which surprised me, is the fact that the religious requirements for slaughter to be performed in accordance with halal or kosher religious requirements is actually much more stringent than what's required for the regular animals that we get our non-halal or kosher meat from. So it's quite remarkable because they want to make sure that the animals are in as relaxed state as possible, they're treated as well, they're well fed and maintained right up until that point. So it's a very respectful way to end an animal's life that's going to then be used to provide food for others. So it was very enlightening for me to realize that. It also makes me want to now eat fish.
Anybody else?
Anyone
like to
else wishing
speak?
to speak? Right up.
My name is David. I live in Kingsborough, and I've been a customer of Riveria for 30 years. I used to live here in Tewksbury, Pine Street. My comment is like, I'm happy the way you came up with some rules to be followed. But when you are making such rules, I would rather you consider that this slaughterhouse is not an assembly line where they supply meat to departmental stores like Market Basket. This is a place where they slaughter just one animal at a time. So there's no crew of people working there, like the list you're asking for. It's just one goat at a time. They never do 2 animals at the same time. So about the workforce, the only person still working there is one. So there's no process, like this, you cut the head, you cut the process, you package, there's no packaging anyways. What we do, we go there with a bucket, meat is cut and take it home. So I would like you to differentiate a little bit between an assembly line slaughterhouse, where they slaughter cows in commercial way to go to the departmental stores. This is like a family thing. So when you're making the rules, consider that it could imply like a economic hardship if you tell them to employ people to report to you the list of people they have employed to be doing that job. To get these animals from wherever they come from, like PA, is only one person who goes there. And probably that same person is the one who feeds them. So it's not an industry where I have employees there. That's my only comment I want to put forward, because I will feel the service if I don't say it, and I have to come here every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you while you're up here, because again, I'm learning a lot about this. I'm aware of the cattle being slaughtered in conformance with kosher and halal religious requirements. And I know goats are being slaughtered there, but is that for a religious purpose, or is that more of a cultural purpose? I'm just curious.
It is just for consumption.
Okay, so just for regular
It's
consumption.
only that we have some different cultures. There's a way you like your cat, your cow to be cut. They like your goat to be cut. There are no religious rituals there.
Okay, I just wanted to,
Yeah.
because if there were, I'd like to learn
We are
about
just
them.
meat consumers.
Okay. That's
we
fine.
We like them fresh from the farm.
Yeah, farm fresh.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
David, could you,
David?
sign the sheet, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for coming
And,
forward.
Print your name if you can.
Okay, is there anyone else here tonight? Okay, when the podium is available, you can come on up. Next, we'll have a tablet up there.
My name is Kelly Joyce. I live in Tewksbury and I work in Tewksbury. And I'm sort of torn between seeing Jen's point and also seeing the slaughterhouse's point. I think that everybody should be held accountable to the same rules. But at the same time, I would hate to see a business be shut down without being given a fair chance to do what's asked of them or what's expected of them. But then on the other side, I feel that there's a list of items from 2014 that seem to never have been addressed. And here we are now, 5 years later, finally addressing those items. But then on the other side, Mrs. Carano, I like how you're talking about you want to see things done and you want to see things done by December 19th. Quickly. I think that's fair of you to ask. I just feel all businesses should have to abide by the same rules, regardless if they've been in business for 1 year or 100 years. I think we should all have to play by the same rules. That's it.
Thank you for your comments. And we've seen that a lot of folks that come before us that, especially those that are getting near or close to maybe retiring from the business, they've sort of need to be reinvigorated and refocused on what it is they need to do, because they know what to do. It's just in those cases with restaurants. But thank you for stepping up. Anyone else willing to step up and speak?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to just note briefly, and again, this is Don Bornstein, attorney for Mr. Oliveira, that I don't want to leave either the board or the audience with the impression that these 17 items are, that there is widespread noncompliance with these items. I have reason to believe that many, if not all of those items are in compliance. What we've offered to do for the board is to hire an outside expert to demonstrate that and to assure the board that those things are being done properly and to have a checkup. I worked with Mr. Oliveira back in 2014. He put significant investment into his farm and specifically into his slaughtering process to be sure he was in compliance with the requirements. I don't necessarily have reason to believe that he's out of compliance with any of those requirements, but I believe it is reasonable for the board to ask for confirmation. And I hear that's what the board's asking for, and we're willing to do that.
Well, that point's pretty well taken because we're not actually making findings of fact that you're out of compliance with the permit. We're allowing you to go forward to ensure the board and the public that Mr. Oliveira is in compliance. And so his point is taken that they are going to hire the expert necessary to demonstrate compliance with conditions 1 through 17. We are not alleging that they are out of compliance with all 17 by any means. What we are doing is having them self-police and bring themselves into compliance and have that person certify to the Board of Health and to the public that the operation is in compliance with the permit. With that said.
And we can't change history, so it's more, we're looking forward, we want to try to see that things are on the correct path moving forward. Go back up to the microphone.
I'll write my name down this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just it's a major minor point about keeping track of doing things the right way. I hear we have goats, they're pigs, and they're cattle. And there's some folks who would not want any pig blood or pig products mixed up with the goats or with the cattle. And I think that there are certainly religious reasons to make sure that the government reasons here are adhered to, so that everything is done carefully. We don't want an unhealthy mess, and we don't want to have folks who come in as customers for their religious purposes, slaughtering, to feel that they're not going to get the benefit of the bargain that they arrived there to have. So I think these are very important that this all be worked out carefully and not just sloppily done. So that's why I say I think we're all on the same side when it comes down to that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So before we make a motion to close the public portion of the hearing, this is your final chance to come on up to the mic. Okay.
Seeing none, I'm going to make a motion that we close the public portion of the hearing. I see it seconded.
Okay, so the motion's been put forth and seconded to close the public portion of tonight's hearing. All those in favor signify by raising your left arm. Okay. 3 left arms to none. Motion carries unanimously.
I'm going to make a motion in the form of conditions, and I'll be looking for a second to this. Number one, I would like the applicant operator to immediately request from the Department of Public Health an inspection for compliance with the Department of Public Health rules and regulations associated with the slaughter of animals under CMR, is it 125, 500?
Well, it's right here, 105.
105,
CMR.
105, 500. So to clarify that, the operator applicant will make an immediate request for an inspection with the Department of Public Health pursuant to 105 CMR 500. What we will do is request a copy of that immediately to the director upon facilitation to the Department of Public Health. And I would do that by certified mail. And I would give the director a copy of the mail receipt. I'm going to suggest as part of this that the department follow up with its own request to the Department of Public Health for an inspection for the Oliveira Farm. So there'll be 2 requests, one from the operator, one from the local Board of Health. Operator will provide evidence of mailing to the director. Number 2, that the operator at Oliveira Farm facilitate and secure an expert consultant / person to do oversight and determine compliance with the Department of Public Health rules and regulations and the local rules and regulations and the permit issued. And I'm going to yield to the chairman for the date of the permit.
July 17th, 2014.
Okay. 3, that for successive Thursdays, starting immediately after Thanksgiving, that the operator provide weekly reports, status reports, to the Director of Public Health in Tewksbury with their progress, with their appointments with the Department of Public Health, and with the dates of inspection as determined by the Department of Public Health for coordination with the local Department of Public Health. Those status reports will continue right up until December 17th, 2 days prior to the December 19th date return for the December meeting, in which we will have a summary report issued by the Oliveira Farm to the director so we can determine substantial compliance with this order. 4. Conditions 1 through 8 are the main focus of this compliance. 1 through 8, together with the rules and regulations, DPH regulations, will be provided to the consultant expert chosen by the Oliveira Farm, and they will determine compliance or they will determine deficiency, and if they determine deficiency, how they are going to remediate the deficiency, correct the deficiency, 1 through 8. So if there's a recognized deficiency for any of the requirements in the permit 1 through 8, the expert consultant is going to provide remediation to correct it and a time frame to do so. That was number 4. Substantial compliance will mean substantial compliance. We can't nitpick. We're looking for leaps and bounds. We're not looking for small movement by December 17th. We're looking for large movement by December 19th. And we talked about a pecuniary penalty if in fact there wasn't substantial compliance, which will be reviewed on the 19th. And if there was a finding of non-substantial or lack of substantial compliance, there would be a $100 a day penalty associated with that until the operator brought 1 through 8 into compliance or had a plan to bring it into compliance that was acceptable to the board. The 1 through 8 isn't limited in that respect as to the expert consultant. The expert consultant will review 1 through 17 and make a report on that to determine whether or not there are any remedial efforts necessary for the entire 17 numbered conditions. And I'm going to defer again, July
17th, 2014.
July 17th, 2014 permit. The monitoring in this case is self-monitoring. I had originally thought that maybe some other type of monitoring was necessary, but at this point, until December 19th, this is self-monitoring by the operator and by the operator's consultant expert. If in fact there was a failure of non-substantial performance, we reserve the right to revisit these and to propose additional conditions, if necessary, to bring the operator into compliance.
No?
With that, I would make that a motion as a temporary order of the board to be reviewed on December 19th. The last thing that I would add is that the hours of operation will remain 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. without deviation, and that if there needs to be a change in those hours, that a written request be made to the board with a reason for the request, so it could be considered at their next meeting. That would mean that you would want to make that request in advance and on the 17th if it's necessary, so it could be considered on the 19th. So with that, the hours of operation under my motion would remain 7 to 7 without deviation, and the only way that would change would be by a proper request to the board through the director, which would end up in front of the board for consideration. With that, that would be my motion. I see my motion has been seconded.
Okay, and I'm not gonna restate your motion for saving of time. So the motion has been put forth and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. 3 right hands to none, so the motion carries.
And I will just say that order will be written up and available to the applicant operator by,
Well, after the tape comes to
Yeah.
Lisa, then we'll-
okay, so there is a little bit of a delay to get the written order, but it will reflect the motion as made here and on tape, okay? All right. With that,
And then we
deal
have-
to you.
And we have the other motion for,
The second motion is the keeping of animals motion, and we had a discussion. We will make a finding on this one. The finding is the fence is not in place as a condition of the keeping of animals permit. And that keeping of animals permit was number 3 on a plan of compliance, and it was dated the same.
no, that one was dated. What did I do with that?
I have July 17th, 2014.
Get it right here. That was dated, June 19th, 2014.
June 19th, 2014. So I'm first going to poll the board to see if they're in agreement with the finding of fact that the fence is down as demonstrated in the photograph.
Yep, I'm fine with you down.
With that finding, we find that the fence is not in place. The condition is not in compliance. And number 3, we're ordering 10 days to put the fence back up in compliance with that June 19th, 2014 order. All in favor on that?
No.
Second?
Okay, motion's been put forth and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your right arm. Motion carries unanimously, 3 right arms to none. Okay. So I guess now we can make a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close this hearing.
Okay, motion has been put
Second.
forth and seconded to close this hearing. All those in favor signify by raising your left arm. Okay, motion carries, 3 left arms to none.
Thank you.
And for anyone that is planning coming to our December 19th meeting, it's gonna be in this room as well.
Is that at 6 or 5?
It's 6.
It's 6.
Yep. So it'll be 6 o'clock here on December 19th.
Thank you for your time. Mr. Chairman, there was mention during the hearing that there was a website that you wanted
Yeah,
to
the-
refer me to, and there was also minutes that were approved for the last meeting that I'd like to receive.
We have both of those
Yeah.
for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Again,
you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So Maria's, we're gonna defer Maria's to, Ruggieri's, not your items, but Maria Ruggieri's 2 items. The Narcan administration training and request to the December meeting. So we get just a couple things left. Thank you.
Thank you too.
See, we bring in Berlin, you don't want to rain on us, so we'll keep inviting you to these.
Yeah. That was for a brutally difficult situation. Excellent job.
Yeah, this was I've never had to put so much effort into 2 hearings as this one.
Dennis's sister.
It's constantly evolving, which makes it a challenge. It's like when Bob and I talked to something, we had one roadmap, and then it'll change the season when we talk to people.
Right. Well, it showed. That was a great 2 minutes.
Good.
And the way you handled it took a lot of steam, potential steam, because you were enforcing what you can do in a reasonable.
But that's what I said about.
It's all about educating.
Great job.
So, here's, so,
Time to change. I think
To be 100% custom, the meat slaughtered from the animal that was purchased by the customer has to be slaughtered and go to him. And so it's packaged ahead of time, and they have to take it on, not for resale, and then it has to clearly label as to who is the owner of that slaughtered animal, so that they can then pick it up. Anything that is slaughtered still owned by Mr. Wolverine. According to USDA rules, if he was then to sell that slaughtered meat, as him being the owner of the slaughtered animal, that would require USDA inspection. USDA thought something like that was happening. But the other piece is, for custom slaughtering, meat cannot be mixed to give you like a full cow, but take apart from this button, it has to be an intact animal. And it's also, that's kind of the question. But those are all DPH issues.
okay. Thank you, folks, for being very patient. So we're gonna move on. New business. And I guess our idea of having times on these things didn't,
You think? I'm sorry, is that on tape?
So, for 6:45, we have on the agenda, Jessica Fitzmaurice, Aesthetics Exchange Skincare, request modification to the Board of Health decision approval of our sync variance for an apprentice.
I think you need Mr. Scott.
Yeah, that's right, he should be right back. So you can at least go through the process of signing in.
Oh, it's in the.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a good night.
Oh, I can give him minutes, because did I have? Is he still here? I gave him the name and so, yeah. Well, did you say as modified? Did they?
As amended.
Was it amended, were they changed? at all?
No, I'm not sure why he,
I don't know why he said that, so I didn't know what he meant, but, you know, I've got the 11, 12 one, if he's, I think he's still here. Oh, he's there. Yeah. Or you can give it to
why don't Bob has left, because all his electronic stuff is here.
yeah,
I think it was just a couple-minute recess.
yes, you might have needed it. There he is.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
You deserve it.
Okay. So now we're at the 6:45 agenda item.
A little late, but we,
So Jessica Fitzmaurice, Aesthetics Exchange Skincare, request a modification to the Board of Health decision approval of our sync variance for an apprentice at Aesthetics Exchange Skincare.
So, Mr. Chairman, the next name on the list, Shannon Lytell had submitted a complete application. On that, I had sent you some information, and it caused us to look into the variance that was initially given to Jessica Fitzmaurice at Aesthetics Exchange, not regarding her practitioner permit, but regarding the physical facility. And that being said, Jessica submitted a letter to modify that variance with a specific reason to have Shannon as an apprentice.
And I think the specific,
Was this the sink variance? What was
Yeah.
this?
Yes.
yeah. So this was,
This was approved when in last April? Was it?
March.
March, okay.
yeah, it was approved at the April meeting.
So in that variance, there was a phrase that was listed that said that the permit makeup procedure is performed, there will be only one client and one practitioner. At that time, there was no discussion about any type of apprentice, wasn't on the table or wasn't even conversation. So the idea is that one was written, one practitioner and one client, and the door would remain open. Among some other things, and there were only to be 2 in a day, no other procedures going on. So, I don't know if you want her to explain.
I think we want to hear from the applicant as to the clarification that you would like us to approve this evening.
So we have those rules in place because there's no sink in the room. So that's why the variance was granted. So I have a nice small facility. We have 3 aesthetic rooms, and our variance is that we lock the front door when we are doing a procedure, and we keep the door open because it's very close proximity if we needed to use the sink. We have a medical director, Dr. Sheckman, that looks over us, and he's very comfortable with that variance in place and our procedures for sanitation. When Shannon went to apply, because it says one practitioner, in the room, it doesn't mean that there's only one practitioner working on a person at a time. We're never both going to be working on somebody. And I had asked verbally if it was okay to have an employee in the facility while performing a treatment as long as there's no other clients in the space. And I was under the understanding that that was a yes. So Shannon has already been in the room with me watching as I'm doing procedures. And so for her to be my apprentice, it's just roles reversed. I'm there watching her do that and making sure that she's following all the guidelines and all the sanitation.
So the clarification would allow the apprentice and the practitioner to be in the room at the same time during a procedure.
Mm-hmm.
That's the clarification you'd like to make.
Yes.
Okay.
So the question and concern is that when having a procedure like this done, it would be in a room that would have the door closed, and there would be hand sink inside the room, so that when someone came into the room and closed the door with the door handle, because the door handle is not sterile, they would then be able to wash their hands and then continue with the procedure. In this place, the door would be left open because there is no hand sink in the room. But there would be no other people, no other foot traffic with that open door. So there'd be no dust kicked up. There would not be any chance for contaminants coming into the room since the door is open. But with a third person there, there is that chance that there may be, that third person would be walking in and out of the room. So then we would have a chance for contamination. And since there is no way to close the door behind them, and then when they come back in, open the door, and then close the door behind them again and wash their hands in the room because there's no sink there, we're just concerned that having that extra person there means that we don't really have the ability to maintain the clean procedure area that we would if we just had no foot traffic in the open door.
I understand you are under the direction of a physician as well.
Yes.
And has the new procedure that you seek been?
Approved by Dr. Scheckman, yes.
Yes, okay. And did he provide any comment or any suggestions, or did he feel that the procedure that you were talking about met the tenor and intent of the regulation and the condition of having the door
Open.
open?
Yep, he's very comfortable with that.
And could he provide any just follow-up document indicating that?
This is the letter that came.
Okay, so he's done that, all right. And do we have a problem with the letter as written, Mr. Chairman?
So the letter we have is, there are two, there's one dated March 23rd of last year.
That was
And
that was the original.
That was the original, which gave the approval with Jessica being the only practitioner working during these permanent makeup procedures. And then there was a letter dated November 4th, 2019 from Dr. Scheckman about the apprentice applicant. But the letter dated November 4th, 2019 does not specifically state his approval to have two people there with the door open and not express any concerns with that. It's just generic, he's comfortable with the existing variance at the facility.
Well, I can understand comfortable with the existing variance because he understands the conditions of the variance, and he was to look at the oversight, and I remember this specifically with Tony having reached out and said that this type of oversight was necessary in order to compel compliance with the variance. Now Dr. Scheckman knows completely what the relief she's requesting is, which is more than one person in the room with the door open. I understand your questions on the possibility of cross-contamination. If we were to approve this and there was some sort of monitoring period where Dr. Scheckman would at least take the opportunity to review the operation on maybe 2 successive 3-month occasions and supply the board with the same opine or same opinion. Would that satisfy us in any manner?
I guess as I'm reading that November 4th letter, it's very generic because it does not describe how procedures would take place with 3 people.
I understand your
I'm sure
hesitation.
Dr. Scheckman can clarify for you if you need it,
Well,
but
that's what we were going to
yeah,
say. Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
Yes, I'm sure he will.
I think what has to happen there, right, is that his description,
Has to be more detailed.
correct.
Got it.
And he needs to describe what it is that he's approving
Right.
as part of the variance, because as a variance, and you're asking a modification, we have to make the findings that there is a reason to vary the terms of your original, and we have to make the same findings that we did when we granted the first variance. So with that, I would consider a follow-up letter from Dr. Scheckman explaining the exact procedure as he set it out in his original document. So if we will look back on the detail associated with the March 22nd, 2018 correspondence, I think if it was reflective of the relief that she was seeking here, that
He did write one with Shannon's name in it that was detailed to the first one that I did pass in. That was specific for Shannon, so he's also comfortable with this variance for her specifically.
So that it was basically replaced Jessica's name with that, and since Shannon was not the applicant, I suggested that that was not the right way to write it, so then he took another shot at it, basically. So if he wanted to write something a little different,
well, actually,
that would be fine as well.
I think that's what I'd be looking for, and I would be comfortable actually granting this relief subject to receiving that document from Dr. Scheckman. And if it was in compliance with what we're looking at this evening, rather than have the applicant come back and do this all over again or continue the public hearing, I think that we understand that there's a letter coming in from Dr. Scheckman. We would be able to close the public hearing. We would be able to actually make a decision on this, subject to receiving the document and having you review the document for compliance.
Are you gonna provide the kind of wording that you're looking for?
Really, just in the original letter, his last paragraph that talks about hand washing sink, it's really
Take that.
have him
Take
describe the
last
process to ensure that sterile or clean conditions remain in that open procedure room. If there are people walking around in and out of the room,
We won't be walking in and out, just so you know. Like, that's our job, is to stay in that room and to make sure that we're staying compliant and that the sanitation regulations are handled in universal precaution. We're never going to be leaving the room. Everything we need for the procedure is in that room. Nobody will be leaving until the procedure is done and everything is cleaned properly.
Then I think if he modified his November 4th, 2019 correspondence to reflect the same paragraph 3 and incorporate it into the 2019 correspondence, that we would be in a position to make findings that the same conditions exist that allowed us to grant the first variance on this request. If anyone has any further discussion, I'll listen.
so I have a question for you. So the applicant had also submitted a letter that they're interested in a larger space at the same facility. So is the variance granted to the mailing address or to the specific unit?
Well, let's talk about variances.
And let me speak about if we're getting a larger facility. If we are, there's a sink in the room. That would be the whole point. It would be so that we don't need any variance.
You'll be moving into compliance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me tell you about plan specifications as they relate to variances. When you provide a plan, it becomes the plan of record for the variance. So any change in the record plan would be a change in the variance, therefore it would violate the variance.
Okay.
So if you were going to another area where you were in total compliance with our regulations and you had a record plan that you'd like to submit to have the director determine that you were in compliance with our regulations, you may not need a variance. You would need a transfer of the permit. And I think those are the things that administratively and ministerially the director could do. Okay?
My only comment would be that in the conditions, it was very specific that this was a new venture. And so there were some other conditions, and if we're talking about having another person accept that as well, is that things like there's a maximum of 2 clients a day. If indeed the next portion will be if Shannon is applying that she needs to accept all the requirements. And also, the question of whether or not we need to make sure that Jessica's experience equals to what a trainer would be as well. So there's kind of a circle thing going on in conversation I've had with Tony and you and.
Well,
So-
from that standpoint, I know that we have been modifying a little bit on the requirements, even with the tattoo regulations and the educational component.
No, the trainer.
Oh, the trainer. Okay, I understand now. Okay.
Since Tony's not here, I'm gonna bring that up. So they kind of go together, but they don't. So-
So how would you like to see that handled?
Well, I mean, I guess if you're inclined to, I know he puts a name in it, but really Dr. Scheckman is saying another person, you know, so it's all about whether it can be another person. He's saying it's okay with the apprentice, but you haven't yet said whether or not she's okay to have an apprentice, so there's some tag.
Chicken or the egg
Yeah, the
issue.
chicken and egg thing going on, I don't wanna, you have to.
Maybe we could clarify, if a move was imminent, when would that take place?
When would what take place?
If you were going to move, if you were going to.
Oh, well, this is just something that we're hoping to go in the future. There's
Just
nothing in
future,
place. Yes,
nothing in
correct,
place.
correct.
So it's
Okay.
really down the road.
This
So it's
is,
down
yeah,
the
well,
pipeline.
it's like my eyes are open. I'm watching real estate, things like that. So I'm ready for the right thing to come along, but who knows when that's going to be.
Okay, so again, the variance is for 2 clients per day.
It's operational.
Yeah.
This is an
Right.
operational variance, and what we have is
Separate
a,
from the next.
that's right.
Right.
First of all, it was an operational variance to start with. Now we have an expansion or a change in that operation, right? And we want to make a finding that the operation will not be affected substantially. And what we want is adequate assurances from Dr. Scheckman indicating that the operation won't be substantially affected. If we got that letter with the paragraph on it, I would feel comfortable that the doctor was aware of what it was, and that would give me the impetus to make the motion to change the operational variance to reflect the new person
Well, I
in
would
the room.
suggest you wouldn't put the actual name.
No,
because
no
what if
name,
another
the new
person-
person
you know.
in the room. And with that, I would feel comfortable in making the motion to approve, subject to obtaining the narrative from Dr. Scheckman indicating that he understands and you understand what it is that we're allowing another person, not specifically a named individual.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say practitioner / apprentice, so we know that the third person is someone that knows what should be done. But I agree not the name, so I'm fine with that.
So I'm going to formally make that motion then, subject to Dr. Scheckman providing a new correspondence, amending his November 4th, 2019 correspondence by including a paragraph similar to paragraph 3, explaining in a narrative form the operation and using the term individual / apprentice. With that, is there any discussion on amending that motion?
No, I have none.
Does anyone want to second that?
Okay.
Let's see.
Motion's been put forth and seconded.
Busy night for you.
All those in favor signify by raising your right arm. Okay, let the record show 3 right arms to none. Okay.
Thank you.
And good luck. Well, remember,
No, there's the next thing.
Yep.
but
she's
remember
not
on
leaving
this
yet.
one, remember on this one,
No.
it's subject to getting the doctor's input to the director
Right.
so that she can allow you to go forward
Right, yes,
with this, with
absolutely.
the operation.
Yeah.
Okay,
Not
that's,
until we
just
have
wanna
any
make
sort of
sure.
licensing or letter will we do anything.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Okay. 7 o'clock,
Wait,
Sharon Littell.
Shannon.
Oh, Shannon.
Shannon.
Littell.
Really?
It's getting late.
Sorry.
Body art apprentice applicant Shannon Lytle to meet Board of Health. Miss Lytle will train with Jessica Fitzmaurice at Aesthetics Exchange Skincare, 1215 Main Street.
Don't remember the date you applied. Let's see. Here it is. Hang on a second. So, yeah, Shannon. Yeah, September 10th, received an application. Shannon Lytle, after submitting and being reviewed, and information reviewed by the public health nurse and myself. She's met all the minimum criteria to be an apprentice, which is pretty much everything other than the training part. Just want to point out that she has already had some training with a place called Prettyology.
Yep.
So, we require a certain number of hours. She's already had, 90.
It's 105.
105, sorry, 105 hour course with in this particular modality. And you can ask her about other things in her own background now, if you like.
And I think you were the one that had taken the aesthetics training course?
Yes.
Okay, at Catherine Hines?
Yes, sir. About 5 years in now.
Okay. So it wasn't clear to me, were you actually licensed by the state as an esthetician?
Yes,
Okay.
2014.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually good news to hear, because we didn't see anything, so I was not sure if you just taken the course and never got
Oh,
certified.
no, yeah. No, I've been a licensed esthetician since 2014. I did
Okay.
the 300-hour program.
So we've never had this, discussion we've had with Route 38 and Lucid Arts on what the responsibilities of a trainer would be and what they would have to prove within, first it's a 6-month, if you make the 300 hours, then you can apply for the practitioner permit. So it might be good for you. What would you like us to see?
Well, I can educate the other board members.
Because it's been in conversation with the other two, but we've never had it with Jessica. So
Right, because-
being a trainer.
Because I learned something new after we had our last working group meeting for the body art regulation. That was the fact that anyone that has gone through the esthetician program, whether under the old format it's 300 hours or the new format it's 600 hours, as part of that training, at least in the 600-hour course now, there is 70 hours of between anatomy and physiology, sanitation, infection control. So that way surpasses what we have for
Minimum requirements.
minimum requirements for a 3-hour skin course offered somewhere.
But not as much as a 4-credit,
Yeah, college course.
which was way up here
Right.
and way down here, so we've got the
So-
middle, there's more of a higher, but not as a.
Right. So I'm very glad to hear that you have
Yes.
that certificate and you passed and everything, because that's something that we'll be looking at maybe going into requirements for the training piece, because
No-
that
no
gives
doubt
them the
about it.
perfect
Yeah.
background of knowledge. And that was in conjunction with someone that owns a training facility who was also a state examiner. And she thought that would be very good for us to look at. So I have no issues. Our challenging part is that we're in the midst of trying to get the body art regs updated, and they probably would have made a much better progress getting to that, except we had this other issue crop up in
Something
town.
jumped out and just hit us, shall we say. and
And you're
derailed us.
familiar with all of the operational guidelines. You've reviewed Dr. Scheckman's guidelines, right?
Yes.
So there's nothing really that you haven't been brought up to speed on.
We need to keep a log.
Of course.
To sign off on things so that you have some proof
Correct.
to show.
Of course.
We can do some photographs. of it.
Yes, of course.
Always looks good.
Yeah, yeah. What about continuing education in these fields. What's going on with that?
I'm actually, my main focus, I mean, I know the permanent makeup is mainly brows and things like that, but because we work with Dr. Sheckman, he does plastic surgery, and my thought to get like, I just love being able to, you know, help people. And areola is a huge thing right now for breast cancer patients. So like my future goal, it's actually going to be in March. I'm going to take another class with the same place I went to, Prettyology in Boston, and do that as well. And it's not the date they haven't secured yet, but it's going to be sometime in March. So hopefully the date that I looked at was March 15th and 16th. So that will be ongoing training with doing areola tattooing, and I'm eventually wanting to do men's hairline as well. So yeah.
So you'd be helping a lot of people that have significant issues with
Yes.
with body appearance. That's great.
Every one of you has good hair here.
It's a requirement.
Well,
So I have no,
action being taken this evening on this request is.
I think it would be a conditional approval. The condition is we have the letter from Dr. Sheckman.
And again, I think I'm going to make that motion for a conditional approval on receipt of the letter.
Motion's been put forth and second for a conditional approval of the apprentice application. All those in favor signify by raising your right arm. Motion carries unanimously, 3 right arms to none. So thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
And I have the check too if you wanted it tonight, or I can drop it off sometime tomorrow. It's completely up to you. Yeah?
Is there anything else we needed? No.
No,
You sent the letter.
Yeah, I sent the letter as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience in getting through.
Yeah, you folks were originally first on the agenda.
Yeah, you.
took us on a ride.
Did we learn anything interesting?
Do you want to change professions?
To hear what happened just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well,
And then I didn't know what was happening, and then I was like, oh, okay.
It does feel like it was months ago, and it wasn't. It was 3 weeks, but it seems like it's been a long.
It has been.
Well, thank you again and good luck.
Thank you so much. I'm so
Okay.
excited. Good luck, guys.
So, 7:15, so we're getting a little further off agenda schedule. So Jason Fandel, body art apprentice for Lucid Arts Tattoo, 361 Main Street. To meet the board, Mr. Fandel will be apprenticing with Nathan McElhaney at Lucid Arts Tattoo, 361 Main Street.
Hello.
So if you sign in on the sheet and then just state your name and address into the microphone, please.
I'm sorry, where are we at? Oh. That's all right. Where are you? How's it going now? Well, good. Good to see you. Oh, yeah. So,
Do I say it now? Sorry, am I introduce myself now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Jason Vandel, 30 Heather Road, Tewksbury, Mass.
There you go. So, the application's dated the 11th, the 8th of November. Jason walked in with pretty much everything we needed. It was pretty, we like that, we like that.
Try it.
Yeah, I think he had some good advice on how to walk in. Sarah checked, all the medical is in line. Basic trainings, you took what did you take?
I took a skin course, CPR, and I forget what the last one was.
Yes.
They were all with Mr. Mike Wallace.
Yes, with the Wallace training.
Wall Street.
So, I was recommending him for apprenticeship with me.
I could be his first apprentice.
And again, I'll just ask you, have you familiarized yourself with all the operational guidelines of your employer?
Yes.
And looks like his application is complete. And I'll make a motion and then we can have some discussion on it if necessary. I'd like to make findings that his application is complete his qualifications meet the requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah. That he's a first-time applicant, right?
Actually, it doesn't need our
It doesn't
approval.
really-
This is,
Doesn't need our approval.
No, just a
He's
meeting.
right. This is, yeah.
So my only question for you is because we are in the process of hopefully finally getting the body arts regulation updated, and there's been talk on the apprentice side about the length of apprenticeship. So how long of apprenticeship are you signing up for or enlisting for?
To my knowledge, the 300-hour course.
Right now, we're at 300 hours.
Accumulative over time. My main job at Lucid Arts is I run front desk and take care of like clerical things, and the apprenticeship kind of came, well, the offer for the apprenticeship kind of came after that. Recently, since the shop has been open, it's kind of a two-person operation. My boss, Nathan, and me are kind of the only ones in the shop most of the time running things. Most of the things that I take care of are when a client comes in, I greet them, I kind of figure out what kind of tattoo or what subject matter they want to get done, and try to be as welcoming as possible and figure out like what a best time to schedule them, because since Nate's the only tattooer at the shop right now, time is stretched, so we have to balance, figure out where on the calendar it would be best to like each tattoo to tattoo. So since I've been working with him for the past year and a half, I've kind of figured out like his pacing and kind of like how long it would take for a tattoo to get done from like subject to subject, and we work together to try to make sure that every one of our clients is taken care of.
Okay, well, I was more relating because I think right now we still have the apprentice license or registration is good for a year.
Well, it's 6 months.
6 months.
And then they re-up if they haven't made the 300 hours of it.
Well, it sounds like he's got a plan to do that over a period of time, so it may require a re-up.
Yeah, no, yeah, so again, you're not here for approval, it's just more of a meet and greet
And wish you the best of luck and keep track of your hours. There's a log associated with your hours, and there'll be someone signing off on that. It sounds like you're already in operation, so.
I work really closely.
Your compliance almost seems like it's your compliance.
Yeah, I think you have a big step up because you're learning the front end of the business, and now you're gonna learn the.
Small business was the main reason I got into this job in the first place. Little history, I used to work in a restaurant, didn't like it. Some things happened in my life and I wanted to make a change. One of the first things on that list was to get a tattoo. So I noticed that Lucid Arts had been opened up in Tewksbury. I just noticed their sign and I went in to schedule a tattoo. Ended up hitting it off with Nathan, and he asked me if he wanted someone to run front desk for him, because at that point it was just him at the time. So he needed someone to come help pull some of the weight, because he can't do a tattoo and greet customers at the same time. And over time, we've just become really good friends, and we're making the business work the best we can.
Well, there's nothing like entrepreneurship with friends.
And things happen for a reason.
That's
I'm a
right,
firm believer
they
in
do,
that.
and we believe that. We wish you the best of luck.
Yep,
Thank
good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
And sorry for keeping you so late tonight.
Oh, no worries.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
See you in 6 months.
You're all set, too. Thank you very much for your service tonight.
No problem.
You need us to sign anything?
Yeah, I just need you to sign.
Yeah, I can do that.
The chairman will put his signature on that one.
Good night.
Good night.
Actually, Susan, why don't you,
Oh, sorry.
because you're more of a town employee than I am.
Oh, sure.
Well,
No, we have a
Hey,
shirt.
except for those last
You have a
couple days.
shirt.
Yeah, we just have a shirt.
I spent more time working in this than,
There are no fights, that was good.
Yeah, no
And I
fights.
guess it had to do with your frustration and your decisions
Yeah.
too. It's different, than what any of them expected. Oh, wait, we're still on.
Yeah, we're still on.
Can you delete that, please? Yes, you can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was
Anytime.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Forgot
Thanks.
to
Thank
pull
you.
on.
Okay, so,
Don't we have a couple of other issues here?
yeah, so the next item on the agenda was two things regarding Maria Ruggiero, appointing her as special agent, and then we're also gonna be
She will
doing
see us
Narcan
in
demonstration. And we're gonna push that off to December.
So is a motion to continue that stuff till December necessary? Or
No.
you're just gonna move it to
Just
December?
gonna-
No, because I can change the agenda at my discretion. And then we
Okay,
move
great.
on to,
The Board of Health meetings for 2020, did anyone have a chance to look at those? Is there any?
no, but we should all
I would
notice that.
reserve, till the next meeting to do that. I'm working on my calendar and I have a couple of, significant travel things coming up for a trial. So I would like to just take a look at the scheduling on that, if I could.
But we don't have Tony and.
Right, so
Right.
why don't we just hold
Yeah.
off until the 19th?
Okay.
But I think the only important thing to note is that, again, on this schedule, it shows that we are in this room on November and December of next year.
Do the holidays,
Yeah,
the ZBA as a buffer
so just like we are this month. So
in March.
if anyone's wondering out there why we had this
Yeah.
well-attended hearing in a cramped room, it's because that was predetermined ahead of us. So we could not change the room location. Okay, yeah, we've been busy in other fronts too. Director reports.
Did I even think about those?
No, I
I
can
was
talk.
just thinking about PFAS.
Yeah, well, that,
Yeah.
yeah, because I can speak on that too, because I'd asked you to put PFAS on the
Yeah.
agenda. It was like the day after I asked you that, the Lowell Sun came out with the article that the Lowell Wastewater Treatment Authority decided not to process the effluent from a landfill up in New Hampshire.
Well, that's a safe thing to do.
Right, and I guess the thing is, when you research PFAS, it's been in our waste stream since the 1940s, but the pace of that has picked up with manufacturing processes and
And it's in many things. I've received some information from the town manager who's been obviously speaking with our water treatment plant and everyone about this, but what are PFAS, and there's some handouts I copied, but you can, I mean, they can be in your nonstick pans, your food packaging, so you can ingest it. Many different
yeah.
things, so it's not just the water, but, and of course, the foam, the fireman that is brought to light
yeah.
of the fireman.
And the wrappings for candy bars, the same wrapping on the inside of those is the same material, so.
So
if-
they did, the town did send out a sample, and we were informed it'll be back in about a month. Because there are no capabilities locally to do that, because it's never been a requirement.
But
So-
microfiltration is still the most effective, is that true?
Yeah, charcoal filtration.
Charcoal
and
filtering?
They're already employing charcoal
Yeah.
filtration at the water treatment
I think
plant.
they're doing the best they can, there's just no proof of that at
Yeah.
the moment. So-
Right, so I'd only wanted this part on the agenda because it was out there in the public awareness, and I just wanted the public to be aware that we do take the health of residents very seriously, in addition to all the other things that come before us. And just wanted to let folks know that this is on our radar screen, and we'll be staying on top of it to see if there's anything that we need to do and inform the public. But it seems like right now, like for a lot of our things, it's in fact-finding motion. And we'll know more when we hear the test results back and.
And there, right now, there's not even human studies been done on it, it's all pretty much all been on animal studies, and so there's a lot to be learned from it, there's a lot of possible connections. I think probably the most important thing I heard is, if you're a pregnant woman, since my daughter-in-law is pregnant, I think, this is the first time you say, okay, go ahead and drink the spring water. Because they did just come out with they tested, I don't know how many different spring waters, and only one came back with PFAS, and they've since, actually, I think they're closing. But they did do what they needed to do to fix that pretty quickly, but then I think they just decided to leave.
Right, that was up in the
I think that
Merrimack
was
Valley.
That was Spring Hill, in Haverhill.
Yeah, that's, that was a supplier for many outlets, and it's glad to see that they've quickly changed.
Yeah, so there's a lot to be learned, and, you know, as the town manager put in the paper, the town is definitely involved, and, yeah, doing what they need to do. I know that there's still concerns for other plants up higher, and I've gotten information about that too, because they are doing this in higher places in Merrimack Valley, River watershed, you know, up in Manchester and other things, so. There's so much, but it's not just them, it's not just them, we have to, it's not just from that one place and one, you know, you can't blame everything on one bit, but.
And we know dilution of pollution is not the answer, so it'd be good to have
It
some
is in
testing
some
and
other
science.
ways.
Yeah.
It is in a lot of things. Septic wells. Sanitizer.
I thought there was something else that had crept up, and I can't remember what that was.
Permitting is going very well. Lisa's, you know. What's that?
60-ish.
Still left. Yeah, so there's still a lot, but and we're only reminding them once, so they'll be paying fees, such, so.
I see there's a bill floating around for the governor's desk on.
That's what it is, it's
Taping
tobacco,
and
that's what we wanted to talk about.
And I know that it's on the forefront here. I just don't think it made a signature yet.
Not yet, not yet.
But, you know,
It's unprecedented, unprecedented.
I'm not in agreement with that a tax will fix anyone's lungs.
No.
Or will come close to paying for a double lung transplant. And I can only stress that, you know, tax may assist in education, but you have to understand that any kind of inhalation of smoke, vapor, or anything else can't possibly be good for you. We hope that the public seeks cessation rather than tax compliance.
I attended a wellness committee meeting at the school with Sarah, and that is a priority of theirs. And we talked about Tewksbury Cares, and they had 3 students there, and it was a really, really good meeting. And I told them how Tewksbury Cares is also working with the students, and that vaping is a big issue there. Because ban or no ban, if they want to find it, New Hampshire is awfully close. Their siblings, parents, still who haven't embraced, you know, the seriousness of it. It's still going to be a concern. So
Until the coolness wears off, I'm afraid the seriousness won't set in. So it's simply not cool. Until that wears off, I think we have a battle on our hands. And we can only stress that there's nothing cool about it. It's a dangerous product, and there'll be no amount of taxation that'll ever change that.
Okay, do any board members have any board reports?
I have
I
nothing.
can't speak, no, the Tewksbury Cares meeting was canceled due to other things that we needed to do as well, and so we rescheduled to, do you know what the date is? Uh-oh. Should I say just check? Is it another Tuesday?
Let's do board charades.
Board charades. Okay, would that be the 12th month? 12th month, okay, 12th month. You said charades, on a Tuesday? On a Tuesday, would that be the second Tuesday? No, the 10th, that's the second Tuesday of the 12th month. That would be Tewksbury Cares meeting at 5 o'clock, yes, in this room. Very good. I haven't played charades in a long time.
If there's nothing forward, I'm going to make
Speed it up, I think, is what
Yeah, you
we
can
need
play
to do.
Mr. Root tonight.
I'm going to
Yes, please.
see if I can follow Mr. Rue's directions and move that we close this hearing. And adjourn.
Oh, she just said second.
Yep, motion's been put forth and second to adjourn tonight's meeting. All those in favor signify by leaving the room.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries unanimously, 3-0. Good night, Tewksbury.
Good night, Tewksbury.